Hi everyone, welcome back to another lightsaber review video. This here is the severed hand stunt saber. This was the prop that was used in The Empire Strikes Back for the scene where Vader cuts off Luke's hand. He was holding this exact same prop. It is not a Graflex. It's technically based on a Graflex, but it has some other parts which I'll go through. Obviously, all of you would know the actual Graflex hero used in Empire Strikes Back looks like this. But the one used in that particular scene, just for the part where he cuts off his hand, looks like that. So it does look very different, doesn't it? So I'll just be going through it and explaining what all the differences are and what I did to achieve this build. So starting from the top, it is still a Graflex cell top part, and this is very reminiscent of the DV6, which was of course Darth Vader's stunt hilt in Return of the Jedi. If you've seen previous videos, I've talked about this extensively. Darth Vader's stunt hilt in Return of the Jedi, DV6, was actually a repurposed Graflex. The top and the bottom cells, it's just been painted and disguised with greeblies to make it look like the other Darth Vader ones, but it's actually a Graflex. And you can see how what they did up here is they bent down these tabs. So they would remove the bunny ears, and you see these two tabs that are going up here, that one and that one, they're sort of bent down. That's on the DV6. You can see it bent down here. And that's exactly what they did for the severed hand. They bent down, the bunny ears were removed and the tabs were bent down. Not bent down all the way like in the DV6, they are a little bit somewhat elevated like that. Next up we have some sort of a red button, which is a bit of a mystery. This is not an original Graflex red button. You can see the originals obviously are well known. They have that knurling, and the button itself looks very distinctive, like has that maroon color. This is the vintage that comes with the flash. I'm not sure what the real part was, or whether they just kind of machined this collar and they put some sort of red button on top. But this part is from Wanawanga. So Wanawanga does a conversion kit. So the Graflex I have on top here is actually a vintage Graflex. But some of the other parts, which I'll talk about later, are Wanawanga. So this red button here with the collar is from Wanawanga. The other difference between this and the DV6 is this one has the beer tab. The DV6 doesn't. So they did bend down the tabs, but obviously the beer tab had to be removed to put this piece on. And this is probably one of the very few Graflexes in Empire Strikes Back to retain its beer tab. Most of the other Graflexes used in the movie had the beer tab removed. There's one or two other stunt hilts that still retain the beer tab, and this is one of them. The inner bulb assembly, again similar to the DV6, but not exactly the same. Here they just removed that brass contact pin that you see over here in a Graflex. That was removed. But the rest of the bulb assembly, the inside bit there, that black, is all there. This is unlike the DV6 where they removed just the top half of it, and there's the other half you can see here because there's a pin, but the top portion is missing. Here they left the entire thing, they just removed the bulb pin. Over here we have two in where the sort of the pins are, where the pins are supposed to be in a Graflex on the two sides. These pins were removed and then they affixed these two cone knobs, presumably just to kind of plug the holes. These will be familiar from the Luke Skywalker Return of the Jedi V2. Down here you can see a cone knob. They used the same greebly, a pair of them, one on each side of the sockets for the pins. And these are also vintage parts. These are sold by Wanawanga, and they're included as part of the conversion kit for the severed hand. So you can get these included with the kit, but I have used vintage parts. These come from a Mitchell turntable, Mitchell transcriptor turntable. And it has a correct knurling, because there's about 4 or 5 different variants of this cone knob with different knurling patterns. This is the correct knurling for both the V2 and the severed hand. So I just glued these on inside the sockets. Removed the pin. I had to undo this, of course. Take out the pin, then put it back together, reinsert it. Attach the red button and the collar from Wanawanga. A spring inside, so it's spring loaded, just a spring from a pen. As I said before, remove the bunny ears, bent the tabs down very carefully. This is a nerve-wracking part because they can easily snap. And here we have a tire valve, which can be bought separately from Wanawanga. It's not included in the kit, but you can buy it separately. This is not a vintage part. The vintage parts of this are quite hard to find, at least the accurate one. This is the exact same tire valve that's used on the DV6. All I did here was obviously just weather it. And then I just put a lot of sort of glue on the insides, like hot glue, and mounted it on top with a little dab of Loctite, so it's positioned correctly. The slide switch was removed as well when I undid the whole upper part, and this is accurate for both the DV6 and the severed hand. The slide switch being this thing, of course. Okay, so most of the work was done on top here in the shroud and upper area. Moving on down, there's this mystery rectangular machine piece of aluminium. I don't know where the real world part came from, or if it was just machined, or its purpose even. It's very strange. But this is obviously part of the Wanawanga kit, and it has this little block and a screw. Now, I did not want to drill a hole in the upper body of the Graflex. I try very hard not to make any kind of permanent changes to vintage parts if I can. So I didn't drill a hole because I'd have to sort of tap it and make sure that the screw holds, so I just didn't want to do that. So what I did instead was I cut the screw down to length, so I put the whole assembly together. This part, the block, inserted the screw, and then cut the screw off at the bottom and just filed it down till it was completely flush underneath. And then I just mounted these 3 parts together with glue, and I mounted the whole assembly onto the flash with just some double-sided tape in the accurate position. And of course I weathered it so it's not so sort of shiny and new. Okay, so moving on down, the lower section. This is not a Graflex cell, unlike the DV6. which used a Graflex lower cell. This used a cobalt flash. A cobalt is, I believe, a German camera. You can see just underneath here the logo. It's covered by the grips, but it says cobalt. Now, the cobalt flash was used in several of the props in the original trilogy, mostly as droid collars by Han Solo, Luke Skywalker, and the Jawas. There's several variants of the cobalt flash. There's black, there's silver, there's smaller ones and slightly taller ones like this. Some of them have a step, some of them don't. Some of them have the knurling here on the bottom, some of them don't. So there's quite a few variants. But the correct variant for the severed hand looks exactly like this. It's silver, it's got the step on top, and the knurling on the bottom. The cobalt will also be familiar to many of you, not just from the droid collars, but from the clip. The cobalt flash comes with a clip like this, which is used in pretty much all the Empire Strikes Back Graflexes to mount the D-ring. There's one here, and there's even one here on the DV6. Now the clips can be found easily as replicas from Wanawanga and other vendors, but unfortunately you can't really find a whole flash as a replica. I just don't think anyone bothers because there's just not any demand for them. Hopefully in the future someone will start making replica, because without that it's not very easy to build this prop from replica parts. I mean, you can easily get a replica Graflex top. You can get these parts as replicas as well, like I said, from Wanawanga. So for me, this was vintage. The Graflex, the cone knobs are vintage, and the cobalt is vintage. But for someone who wanted to do this on a budget and wanted to do it from replica parts, they kind of hit a dead end when it came to the lower cell, because it has to be a cobalt. And there are no cobalt replicas that I know of anyway. So hopefully someone will start making these in the future. Okay, so with the cobalt, this part here would be knurled, and I would have had to grind down the knurling till it's completely smooth like that. But again, I did not want to destroy it. It's a very old and rare part. So what I did, I'll just take it off and show you. So this red 3D printed part comes from Wanawanga. It's included in the kit. It's just so you can attach it. But this top here that I'm showing you, this top portion only, is a replica. The rest of it down here is the authentic vintage cobalt, but the top is a replica. I'll show you the original part. And these are all the extra parts that came in the cobalt flash that weren't used. So this is what the original looks like, and you can see here it's knurled. It would have had to sit like this, and I would have had to use the Dremel to completely grind down the knurling and make it nice and smooth for it to be accurate, but I did not want to destroy it. Fortunately, Matthew Deltor from the RPF, I think on the RPF his name is actually Ethan, but I'm not too sure, but he's on Facebook groups as well. He is based in France, and he has machined these replica tops specifically for this purpose. So you can remove the vintage cobalt top, and it's got its own set screw, so you can attach it to that part here, and it's got the same two holes on the bottom, so the screws can attach it to the lower end of the cobalt, so it fits perfectly. It's very, very easy to install, but it already comes it's not knurled. It's already machined in a way that it's flat, so it's instant. You just pop it on. All I did was literally just a little bit of weathering, again because it was shiny and machined aluminium. Just a little bit of aluminium black, so it looks as if it's distressed. but I chose to go that route. I know a lot of people want to make it as vintage as possible and use that part, and I have nothing against that, but one day I may want to sell this, and it just has no value without the top part. So I'd be able to kind of replace it and sell it. It'd still be good as new, the Cobalt. And even if I don't sell it, I just don't really like destroying vintage parts if I can avoid it. So that's the bottom part of the Cobalt. It looks like that. And then the grips come from Wonga. They need to be cut down to the accurate length, which is around just under 90 millimeters. So they're roughly aligned at the bottom end of this step. There isn't really an official sort of grip guide, but I did print off Wanga's blueprint, and it has just a sort of a diagram of their orientation. So I just cut that out, stuck it here on the pommel, and then I used it to kind of line them up roughly and stick them down with double-sided tape. Okay, so once again, vintage Cobalt flash, replica part from Matthew Deltour, who I will link in the description below. So if any of you want to purchase this part, it's something like 30 euros. Grips from Wonga, which I've cut down and weathered. The rest of the parts from Wonga included in the kit are this attachment part here, that rectangle assembly with the block and the screw, the red button and the collar, and you will also get two cone knobs, which I did not use. What is not included is the tire valve, so just be careful, you'll have to order that separately from Wonga. Okay, just slot this back in. I can't actually remember the orientation, I'll have to check it's something like that, I think. I'll have to double check. Yeah, one last thing about this. This is how it looked during production. So in that scene, and there aren't very good reference photos of that, unfortunately, but there's one or two, it definitely looked like this. But in post-production, so years later, when this hilt kind of resurfaced, it looked slightly different. It was a little bit more weathered. So if you want to do the post-production appearance, there are some scratches down here on the body where the brass has kind of come through. It looks like the shroud area from inside here up to about here something is painted with some sort of grayish silver paint. And finally, the tire valve is missing, presumably fell off, and you can see instead there's a little bit of like putty residue inside. And one of the grips is missing. One of them had just fallen off. So I could always do a post-production appearance if I wanted to. I'd simply have to just remove the tire valve, remove the correct grip, and just add a little bit of paint kind of here on the inside. And that's it. So yeah, there's not much more to say about this prop. I just kind of did it for completion. Just to have more or less the full set of the Graflexes used in the original trilogy, as it has a lot of differences from the main hero Graflex. It was a fun little build. I think that the trickiest part is always going to be bending the tabs and making sure you sort of get all that right, take out the slide switch and undo the assembly and kind of put it back together without the pin. And that's it. The rest of it is very, very straightforward. The only real problem, of course, is going to be sourcing the right Cobalt variant, which can be very expensive. But yeah, like I said, I will leave a link down below for the top that you can buy from Matthew. The rest of it, Graflex, Wonga conversion kits. You could get most of this if you can find a Cobalt on eBay or something. Anyway, thank you very much for watching. I hope you've enjoyed the video. I will see you in the next one.